In the cold dawn of a Norwegian winter, long before the world knew his name, a young boy stood on a snow-covered hill. He watched warriors train with axes, shields, and spears, their grunts, and the clash of steel echoing in the frosty air. That boy was Harald Sigurdsson, later known to history as Harald Hardrada, the last great Viking, born into a world soaked in blood, loyalty, betrayal, and legend. Harald grew up hearing stories of glory from his half-brother, King Olaf. It was in these formative years that he first tasted the fire that would burn in him, for the rest of his life, the unquenchable fire of conquest. At just 15 years old, Harald stood shoulder to shoulder with his brother at the Battle of Stiklestad. The sky turned dark with arrows as steel clashed with steel in a brutal symphony of war. King Olaf fell, a hero's death on a bloody field. Harald, wounded and bleeding, escaped the battlefield with only a handful of loyal men. But this crushing defeat did not break him, it forged him. He vowed that one day he would return, not as a boy fighting for another man's crown, but as a king destined to carve his own legacy into the very bones of history. Harald fled eastward, a teenage exile with a king's ambition. He crossed frozen forests and violent rivers, a relentless journey that finally brought him to the opulent court of Kievan Rus. The tall, battle-scarred boy soon became a towering warrior, his presence commanding respect and fear. His skills with the blade were unmatched, his courage unquestionable. His reputation grew, and soon he journeyed south to the heart of the civilized world, Constantinople. There, he joined the Varangian Guard, the most elite fighting force in the Byzantine Empire, a brotherhood of Vikings and Norsemen sworn to protect the emperor himself. For the next decade, Harald fought across distant and exotic lands. He faced down enemies in the scorching deserts of the Middle East, stormed the mighty fortresses of Sicily, and crushed bloody rebellions within the golden walls of Constantinople itself. His name became legendary. Songs were composed about him, songs that told of a giant who strode through battle, like a wolf among sheep, leaving a trail of broken shields and fallen enemies. He was not just a soldier, he was a force of nature. He learned the art of command, the subtleties of politics, and the immense power of wealth. By the time he decided to return to Norway, he wasn't just a warrior anymore. He was rich, experienced, feared, and hardened beyond imagination. And he came home with one singular, burning goal: to take the crown. Norway soon had a new king, one who ruled with iron discipline, sharp intelligence, and a sense of destiny that had been carved by nearly 30 years of constant war. He unified the kingdom, put down his rivals, and established a rule that was both feared and respected. But Harald's hunger did not end with ruling Norway. The old Viking dream, the one that had echoed in the hearts of his ancestors for centuries, still called to him: conquer England, and fate, as it so often does, presented him with an opportunity. In the year 1066, the English throne was left vacant after the death of King Edward the Confessor. Claims and alliances twisted like a gathering storm. Harald saw weakness in the chaos, weakness he intended to exploit. He gathered one of the last great Viking armies, a massive fleet of long ships that stretched across the Norwegian horizon. Each ship carried men who believed in the old ways, men who still thought a true Viking should die with a sword in his hand, fighting for glory. This wasn't just an invasion, it was the final, defiant roar of a dying age. Harald's fleet sailed through cold, unforgiving seas and crashed onto the shores of northern England like a thunderbolt. The first battles were swift and brutal. Villages fell, soldiers fled. The people of England whispered in terror that a giant had arrived, a man of mythical size, a warrior king who wore blue silk under his armor and laughed in the heat of combat. At the Battle of Fulford, Harald's army crushed the northern English forces, proving once again that even after centuries, the ferocity of the Vikings could still dominate a battlefield. Victory strengthened his confidence. England, the richest prize in the north, seemed to be within his grasp. But destiny does not gift its crown without a price. Just days later, Harald met the newly crowned English king, Harald Godwinson, at a place called Stamford Bridge. The sun burned hot that morning. Mist rose from the river as two armies faced each other, one representing the end of the Viking Age, the other the rise of a new world. Harald Hardrada stood tall, his massive frame a beacon for his men, his great spear held firmly in hand, as confident as ever. In a moment of pure, defiant pride, he removed his heavy chain-mail armor. He would fight in nothing but his blue silk tunic, wanting the world to witness how fearlessly a Viking met his fate. The battle began. Arrows rained down. Swords clashed. The narrow bridge turned red with blood as men fought and died with savage intensity. Harald, in the middle of the chaos, was a whirlwind of destruction. He charged again and again, fearless, seemingly invincible, until a single, fateful arrow struck him in the throat. The last great Viking collapsed. His warriors, seeing their king fall, fought on with a desperate fury until the final man fell, and the wind carried their war cries into silence. Harald Hardrada died that day, and with him, the Viking age breathed its last, final breath, but his story a song of exile, ambition, legendary battles, and an unshakable will to conquer remains etched into the heart of history. Harald Hardrada wasn't just a king. He was the last, brilliant flame of a world that refused to die quietly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories of the world's greatest legends.